Okay, hello everybody and welcome to this bonus webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be looking at setting up and measuring CI projects. If you're just joining us and you haven't been looking at the chat, you will need a pen and paper for a little interactive bit of this webinar. We don't like to let you just sit there and listen to me and Ian's Northern Double Act. Like to get you involved as much as possible. So at a certain point, we'll grab a pen and paper and there's a little exercise to get on with. But we'll get started and we'll crack on. So quick introductions. You know that supporting this webinar, we've got Lynn Winstanley, the Director of Sustainable Improvement. We've also got Claire Duggan, Director of Transformation in the North, and is a big lead in the CI work that's happening. We've got Mr. Smith, Ian Smith, the very Geordie man, who's going to talk through the majority of the slides today. I've managed to hand off quite a lot of them to him. And myself, Michael Anderson, an Improvement Manager within the Sustainable Improvement team. So, we're going to quickly recap on the ways to interact. I know this is old hat for a lot of you so far, but there might be some newbies on this call, so let's just quickly go through this again. So, different ways to interact. First of all, you've got the feedback icons. So over there on the right-hand side of your screen, in the participants panel, you have little icons that look like a little hand and a megaphone. If you click on the megaphone, you get a little list of options, and you can say yes, no, too fast, too slow, applause, or laughter. Anybody's found those, please feel free to give me whatever symbol you feel like I deserve. I'm expecting a lot of red crosses. Thank you, Rachel. Straight in there with a red cross. Lovely to see. Anybody found those? Let's have a look. Got a little bit of feedback so far. Thank you. A little bit of applause. Smiley face. Great. Okay. Next, we're going on to the chat box. So when using the chat box, I'm sure a lot of you have got a little drop-down box that says send to. Please select all participants. If you select anything other than that, some of us might not be able to see what you're typing. Now, if you want to say things behind our back, that's great, but ideally we'd love to see what everybody's saying to each other. So please select all participants, type your message in the chat box, and then hit that send button or hit enter and we'll be able to see what you are. So I know you've been using it already, but if you haven't, please introduce yourself, stick a little message in there, just say hello, and we'll get some chat going throughout this session. Finally, the annotation tools. Top left of your screen is a little pen. If you click on that little pen, you get a little box up here, a little bar down the left-hand side. And we are going to use the arrow at the top today. So if you click on that arrow, you will be able to annotate. So we should be able to see people's names if you click that arrow. There we go. The adventurous among you might try some of the other ones, but for today's session, we might be using the arrows. Little smiley face, good to see. Let's see who we've got joining us. Mr. Smith. Oh, Amy Breen. I think she's one of the Team Soppy. It's not going to mean a lot to some of you, but she's there. She was there at the hackathon. Her team won in Liverpool. Rebecca from the CI team. Great to see. Okay, we're getting the hang of that. Thank you to everybody with the smiley face and the little CI logo there. Okay, we're going to crack on. So what have we done so far? So if you've been lucky or unlucky enough to have joined us in the last few sessions, you will know that we've looked at the foundations of lean methodology and CI and the Plan, Do, Study, Act model, and all of which underpins our continuous improvement approach and the benefits that can go along with that. We've looked at visual management and how that can help with our work, as well as the 5-step approach 5S and how that can help you organize and standardize your workplace. We had a go at the world's first 5S numbers game, which I think went pretty well. And then we looked at creating standard operations to reduce variation. So if you have a standard, you have a set way of doing things and everybody agrees upon it, tends to be a lot easier to work that way. And we try to demonstrate that using Microsoft Excel and another little crazy game. If you missed any of those and you think, oh man, I really missed out, then you can get the recordings of the previous webinars at the link that is available there. And I'm hoping my colleague Rachel Gray, who has already red-crossed me, will be able to put that link in the chat box for anybody. Anybody that wants to get to those, just give us a message. We'll make sure you get to the right place. So today we're going to be looking at Module 4, setting up and measuring CI projects. We are yet again, I hope, Mr. Smith,
yes,
going to attempt to do some double acting on a webinar.
It seems almost inevitable.
It does, doesn't it? They're going to have to put up with it. But you have got your initials next to most slides, which I'm happy to see. So I'm going to hand over to you for the time being and let you crack on.
And while Michael's doing that, if the recordings aren't the way you want to go and you've missed any of this webinar series, I do believe we either have announced or will be announcing some more dates to run the series again just after the summer in September. So you can do it live if you want to take part in the exercises. Anyway, today, so back to our continuous improvement and lean house. So we've looked at the vertical pillars in the middle of the screen there: value and waste, visual control 5S, and standard operations. And today we're going to look at the foundation, which hopefully is just highlighted on the screen there, continuous improvement. We talk about the structure that we can use in some simple documentation to set up, run, and manage our continuous improvement projects. So today we look at how we set up and document projects. We'll discuss the need to have a clear aim for our improvement activities, so we'll know what we're trying to achieve. We'll look at the importance of measurement for improvement and look at the different types of metrics and measures that we can use. And we'll also introduce a new tool, or at least a new tool to this webinar series: driver diagrams. Very useful for setting up improvement projects and connecting changes that we might want to test and try out as part of that project that are going to hopefully deliver our aim. And we'll introduce some standard documentation, very, very simple, 3 single-page forms for documenting our improvement projects and efforts. Excuse me, I seem to have a bit of a cough today, for which I can only apologise. So, we've got a 5-step process for a continuous improvement project, and we've got a guide on this. There may be a link to it pop up in the chat box. There's certainly a link to it at the end of the session. Everything you need to know is in this webinar, but it's a good resource if you want to dip into that to keep yourself on track or check out or refresh or learn a little bit more. So the first step we've got in this process is preparation. Main thing here is to get very clear on what we're aiming to achieve and to get a little bit of data around where we are now, so when we start to make changes we can see if they are improvements. Second stage is to form and start our project. Key steps here are understanding the different people involved and the different roles, so forming the continuous improvement team and starting to communicate with those involved about what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how we're going to go about doing it. Step 3, diagnosis, a very important step. Key to the improvement effort is really understanding what problem it is we're trying to solve and to understand the current state. Without those things, we can't really set a very clear aim statement about what we're trying to achieve. So the diagnosis stage is very much key to the improvement. Next is getting on with implementation. Once we know what the problem is and what the aim is, we can form some ideas for changes that we think are going to deliver the outcome that we're looking to achieve. This is where our plan to study, act and model for improvement, which we've talked about several times previously and we'll do more today, comes in, creating those work standards and designing the future state. That's hopefully going to deliver our improvement aim. And finally, 2 important steps is measuring the change to demonstrate that the changes we've tried are actually delivering the improvement we sought and aren't just changes in and of themselves. And when we've got to that successful point, very important that we capture the learning, and hopefully if we can share that with each other, we can progress our continuous improvement efforts more quickly. So we've got some paperwork that attached around that. Everybody loves paperwork, not so much. So ours, we strip back to the bare minimum. We have 3 forms, each a single page, keeping things very concise, very crisp, very focused. A little bit small on here, I appreciate, but we are going to look at them a little bit in a little bit larger full screen shortly. So the first one is project form, very helpful in the preparation, launch and diagnosis stages, documenting the aim, the team, and the main problem within the current state. We have got our project metric report. It's obviously very helpful for documenting our metrics and measures. What are we going to measure and what's the outcome? So helpful in the diagnosis and the evaluation stage. And we've got our improvement action plan, which is helpful in the implementation. part of the project for documenting what are the tests of change that we've agreed to carry out, and how we carried those out and what has occurred as a result. So see here, we've summarised where these things fit. So we've got 3 simple forms, relatively simple forms, very crisp and concise, that align to these 5 stages of running a continuous improvement project. All of this aligns very neatly to the model for improvement and the planned use to the act cycle that we've talked about earlier in the webinar series. So first up, what is a project form? We'll see whether Michael wants to join me for any of this. So there are some key bits in here to discuss, and we've chunked it up in kind of horizontal rows. So there in the top, we can see where we would document the project, or the title of the project, and the key lead roles, the sponsor, the project lead who's carrying out, the process owner who actually owns the bit of work or the process that's being looked at, and hopefully one of ourselves or one of our colleagues in the sustainable improvement team will be able to help you with a little bit of coaching through your continuous improvement project. The team members on the right hand side, so those who are going to be involved. Helpful to think about those early on. We could also pull in people who we think we might need some help from, IT in the States, or with solid colleagues to try and to pull in. And then the current situation. What we're trying to document here is really the crux of the problem in a very concise way. So it's talking about the what and the why rather than the how. So what's the problem? Why is that a problem, or why is that important? So that's going to set us up to really focus what our aim is. If we understand the problem we're looking at, we can set an aim statement. That's the bottom left-hand box, which is really going to tell us what the continuous project aim is. Clear, unambiguous, realistic and achievable. We'll unpick aim statements in more detail very, very shortly, and the targets and boundaries box is really setting a basic scope, what's in and what's out, what's the start and end point of the process that we're looking at, and 1 or 2, maybe 3 numerical targets to help us know what are the quantitative deliverables that we can measure, that can tell us if the changes we test are an improvement. So all of the key aspects of the key questions of the model for improvement are captured in that project form. And do you want to say anything at this point, Mr. Anderson?
No, I think you talked through that very well. I'd say probably you touched on it briefly there, but the importance is the scope is always quite important to say what's out as well as what's in. Especially if you know who's coming, you know what characters you've got coming to an event are going to be involved in a project, and you know that they've got a bit of a chip on their shoulder. It really helps to just sort of define, we are looking at this, we're actually specifically not looking at that, and that's quite useful. And then we've got that little grade box at the bottom there, which is
yes.
popped up, which
it is. We find it helpful when we're looking at the process to keep just a bit of a picture of what the high-level process flow is. It's not something we want to go into a great deal of detail today about. It's best done when you're looking at something live, and it makes a lot more sense when you've got a process to look at. And if either one of us is doing a bit of coaching work with you, or one of our extended team, they'll be able to help you to understand what we'll need to document in that box. So we're not going to focus on that part today, just the rest of the process. So, excuse me, moving on. So the key aspect of that project form is getting a good aim statement, being very clear about what it is we're trying to achieve with the improvement project. And it's got 3 bits to this statement. So it's document what aspiration is, should be measurable, as we say. It's about your specific priority, your particular process improvement. And the 3 aspects are for whom, how good, and by when. So it's telling us what's the system that we're looking at, that we're trying to improve. In our case, that's probably going to be what process are we addressing that we're trying to improve. A brief description of what we're trying to achieve with specific numerical goals. So how good do we want that to be? And some kind of time frame for achieving that, so by when. So there are 3 aspects: system, goals, and time frames, or in simple language, for whom, how good, and by when. And it's probably best looked at with an example. So again, one taken from the little guidebook that we mentioned at the beginning. Aim statement here for patients on our practice list. one from primary care here, with a confirmed chronic obstructive pulmonary disease diagnosis. We will increase the proportion with an individualised care plan to 75% within 6 months and 100% within 9 months. So the system here, or for whom, is the patients on the practice list with a COPD diagnosis. The goal, or the how good, is we want to increase the proportion of those folks with an individual care plan to 100%. And the time frame is 6 to 9 months. So we've got the 3 aspects of a good aim statement: system, goal, and time frame within that statement. So if I am not mistaken, and I very easily could be, we've got some aim statements for you to take a look at and tell us what you think. So this is the bit where we'll use the arrow tool from the annotation tools on the left hand side. If you can pick your arrow tool and tell us whether you think this aim statement, we will improve services, is a good aim statement, a bad aim statement, or just a plain ugly one. So we'll give you a moment to do that, and I'm going to get a sip of water while you do.
That's it. Very good. Hopefully Mr. Smith is plugging down the
dying slowly in the background. Never mind. Many slides to work through. So we're seeing people say bad and some people say it's ugly, but if we think about it in those terms, it doesn't really tell us what system we're looking at or for whom. It doesn't really give us a goal, and it doesn't really give us a time frame, so it's probably not a good aim. So bad or ugly would seem to be the order of the day. So let's try another one. What do we think of this one? We will achieve a 20% reduction in emergency admissions for heart failure patients. Same again, keep the arrow tool. Tell us what you think of that particular aim. It's a little bit more of a mixed bag coming through here, Michael. Some say bad, some think it's good.
Some crafty people using the in between the boxes.
Yes,
thinking
yes.
outside the box. Yeah, it's good to see.
Yes, very liberally. I'm going to take it as that they think it's better, but maybe not quite as good as it could be. But what have we got? So it's got a goal in there. It's telling us we want to achieve a 20% reduction in emergency admissions. There's a system, or for whom. It's telling us that it's for heart failure patients. It doesn't seem to have a time frame, so it's maybe missing something around by when we want to achieve it. So it's a better aim, it seems, people think, but could we be better again? So let's try one more of these, if I can click on the right place. Here we go. So something we'll all be familiar with, I'm sure. For clients contacting the IT help desk, we will increase the percentage of help requests resolved on first call to 75% with 6 months. Not waiting for me, getting straight on with it. It's what I like to see.
People might have figured out that we've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, I think.
Well, no guarantees that there'd be a good example amongst it. But certainly they all think that's pretty good. And let's have a look. Well, it's for clients contacting the help desk, so that's for whom, or the system. We'll increase the percentage of requests resolved on first call. So there is a goal, and there's a time frame within 6 months. So it has got 3 elements in, so therefore under 25 words we've got a very crisp statement of what that improvement project would be aiming to achieve. So I'd say that one is not too bad at all. So what have we got next? So how might that translate to a project form? So an example project form here, one of mine, Get Fit for 2018. Possibly not the first year that I've had this particular project as it goes. So there aren't too many people involved in this. There's basically me. It's up to me to be motivated to do this activity, sponsored by Domestic Line Management. That's Mrs. Smith to me. And why am I doing this? Well, what's the problem? Not always, but a lot of why I work when we're not out and about doing things is office-based and sedentary. I also went back to university a while ago, so I was studying part-time. That involves sitting at a desk as well. Therefore, my activity levels are lower than I would like. Why does that matter? Our Public Health England colleagues will tell us that sitting is the new smoking, and that a sedentary lifestyle is bad for our health. and it's recommended that we get at least 150 minutes, active minutes each week. So that's why what I'm expecting to get from it. If I can increase my activity and get fitter, I'm expecting to feel more energetic, see improvements in my fitness levels. So how have I captured this in an aim statement? I captured it like this, aiming to improve my fitness level by increasing my daily number of steps to at least 10,000 per day within 6 weeks. So hopefully I've captured a sister that's about me, a goal, get my activity and movement up to over 10,000 steps per day, and the outcome that I'm looking for is to increase my fitness level. And so I've got some, excuse me, some targets and boundaries, things that I'm going to measure. I'm going to measure fitness as resting heart rate, which has been shown to be a good metric for overall fitness. I'm going to measure daily number of steps and daily active minutes. I'm going to use a fitness wristband to do that. I'm also going to keep an eye on my study time, make sure that I'm not dedicating all of my time to getting fit and letting that slip. Otherwise that may not be so good for that piece of work. We'll come back to this example as well throughout to illustrate the concepts, forms and points that we're going to make. I believe you have your own Get Fit for 2018, do you not, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, mine was a lot more dramatic and extreme, as the old wedding is coming over the horizon very quickly.
Get wedding fit for 2018.
Get wedding slim, basically. Yeah, that's the plan. So I've just drastically cut calories and tried to increase exercise, which has the overall effect of being miserable, which is great. So yeah, living life.
Well, that is the aim of marriage. So moving on. We've got a new tool, or at least new for this webinar, to use driver diagrams. Look like tree diagrams. You can see them here on the right-hand side of the screen. Basically, a picture of the system, or the for whom, if you like, that links the aim, what we're trying to achieve, to changes that we might test that we think are going to drive towards delivering that aim and that outcome. So it provides a logic for why we're going to do a particular activity with a reason for thinking why it's going to help deliver the outcome. So very, very good thinking tools. Very, very simple to use. You can do these on your own, as I did for my Get Fit example here, or even better if you do these with a team using flip charts and post-it notes. So what are the elements of these? So we've got the outcome we're trying to achieve, which is the aim, or the aim statement. That's not a good aim statement, it's just a placeholder to say that's where it goes. And then we've got these things called drivers, things that we think we might need to address to achieve that aim. So what are the big primary drivers that we think we need to look at to move towards the outcome of our improvement projects? And we can break those down into smaller bits to think, well, what do we need to do that's getting a little bit more focused, or what might we need to address to achieve those primary drivers, and so on. And therefore we get very specific with change ideas. What changes can we make that are going to influence those drivers to deliver the outcome? It's not complicated, much more easy to look at as a simple example. So Get Fit for 2018 is back. The aim statement from the form that we just looked at. Aim, improve my fitness level by increasing activity. So what are the drivers of that? From what we were talking about before, I need to reduce my sitting at desk time and increase my ambulatory time. So sedentary time, ambulatory time, really posh words for sit less, move more. And my secondary drivers, I'm starting to think about how I can do that. I need to build something into my working day where I can, into the daily routine, so I can move more while I'm at work, and then think about what activity I do outside of work. And the improvement opportunities that I've selected, the changes I think I'm going to make that hopefully will drive towards those aims, are these ones here. I'm going to think about, because a colleague has recommended it to me, can I stand and walk for telephone calls? And can I hold meetings out of the office instead of people come to my office? We'll have meetings there. Can I go to the staff restaurant, to the staff canteen, anywhere that creates a bit of motion or mobility? And outside of work, Public Health England, again, they've just relaunched their Couch to 5K app, so a little bit of running. Can that get my fitness to improve as well as get my steps up? Make sure I walk to the shops at the weekend, even if just for a chocolate bar to annoy Mr. Anderson. So once we've got those ideas for changes, we can start an action plan and we can document those. So Mr. Anderson, what's the best way to do that in our experience?
Our experience is simple as always. It's how I get described quite often. It's quite simple. So we use that in everything that we do. So our action planning tactic is to strip it back and make it as plain and simple as it can be. So we tend to use 30-day action plans. So if you're planning anything longer than 30 days, chances are your action's not going to be that smart. It's not going to be simple, measurable, specific, achievable, realistic, timely, whichever smart you want to use. And it's going to be something that's a bit woolly and not very doable. Dedicate a responsible person, so who's going to do this? That can be more than one person, but you need a name on there, and clear timescales for each action. So how long is it going to take? When will you have it done by? They can be small, but they're building blocks towards a bigger thing. So it's all about having something that you can physically take away from, when you're setting these actions, you've got something that you can think, yeah, I know what I've got to do when I leave this meeting that will get me towards that action, or will even complete that action, rather than it being, oh, that's my action. Well, I've probably got to contact 5 different people about that, and I've got to work out what they think, and then I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. Just keep it as simple as possible, and making sure they're reviewed after every 30 days. So are we getting to where we need to be? And if not, why not? So that's our action planning. I'm going to ask my colleague. Yeah, there we go. He's we're like Dwight York and Andy Cole in the 90s. Niche reference. Okay, and we've got our standard continuous improvement action plan template, which is a very simple Word document. And all it is a description of the action, ensuring that it's smart. Who's going to do it? So identify the leader for the action. By when are they going to do it? So a clear date within the next 30 days. And then we've got a nice little simple completion wheel, which sort of, in our minds, follows the PDSA cycle. So once you've started planning it, fill in the first section. Once you've started doing it, fill in the next one, and work your way around until you've got a fully completed wheel, and then the action is complete and done, and you can move on. So once the action started, fill them in and get going with it. So you can see at a glance, again, harping back to visual management, what's happening where and where the blockages are. And I think we've got a little bit of interaction coming with you guys.
Yes, so, we do.
This is a classic action plan that we see quite a lot. So the action is develop a culture of continuous improvement across our team. The person responsible for it is this chump, Michael Anderson. And when he's got to do it by, it's going to be confirmed. But he'll figure it out. It'll be in 30 days probably. Good, bad, or ugly. If you can grab your pointers, that'd be great.
I should have written an action for you to do all of these slides instead of me, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
That's what I should have done.
Sadly, I got in there first on that front.
Yeah.
We got a really good comment from Simon a little while ago saying he found the following statement some time back, which is related to weight but can be adapted to anything, which is what do you want to weigh? What is causing you to weigh more than you want? And what do you plan to do about it? So really simple, just breaking it down. And that's exactly what the driver diagram today do. And it's that really, really simple.
So we've got a mixed views. Most people think it's bad. Some people think it's ugly. It's certainly lacking a time frame. So
I would throw that more towards the hideously ugly section than the bad section, because I don't think you can tangibly select a culture and change it, but I'm glad no one's gone for the good.
It's not altogether specific, is it?
It's not great on the smart, but
let's try this one.
So again, we've got design and test a new standard form and test the new process with the team for 20 days and then review against baseline data. Again, somehow it's me that's having to do it, and I'm going to have to do it, have it done. Oh, good, on my wedding day. So I'll be working through that. That's great.
Deliberately so.
Deliberately so, yeah. Is that good, bad, or ugly? Feel free to put in the chat box if you think that can be changed. We haven't set these up to be perfect. We've set them up to spark a bit of discussion. So.
You can test being married for 20 days and see if you like it.
Yeah, I don't think that's built into the contract.
No, I don't think so.
No. Bad if clashes with something important. Would you say that's important, Diane?
Depends how important this improvement is.
Yeah. Too long, too broad. Yeah. Yes, Rebecca, completely agree. There's potentially more than one action in there. There's the design of a new form and there's the test of it. They've been grouped together. But overall, I would agree with people. We've got some people saying it's bad, it's not perfect, but majority of people in between the good and the bad, and I think that's probably right. You know, it's a lot more smart than the previous one, but there's always work to do.
I think there's two separate steps. It's a little bit easier to make sure we've designed it and then we can test it out. Okay, good stuff. So what have we got now? Just a quick flip. How am I getting on with Get Fit for 2018? What did I decide to do? So my actions, how did I specifically frame some of those things from the driver diagram? I said I would add running 2 to 3 times per week into my routine outside work using the NHS Couch to 5K app. Said I'd start in February. It wasn't a New Year resolution, but it started early in the year. And I said I would stand and walk for telephone calls at work. We will see how I got on with that a little bit later on.
Just for people that are wondering, Ian's middle name is Mallory, so just that's what
it
stands for. Yeah,
it's Murray. In fact, it's a family name from my Scottish heritage. Why do I get the feeling you think that's funny nonetheless, Mr. Anderson? So, we've got our actions, we're going to test them out. Why do we need to measure and why is that important? Well, there are different ways to measure for different reasons. We're particularly interested in measurement for improvement, but one of the key ways, one of the main ways that people measure is for performance. This is usually carried out by audiences to government, regulators such as ourselves, commissioners, for the purposes of comparison, different individuals against each other, different organisations against each other, benchmarking, where we're trying to find out is somebody particularly good and is there something we could go and learn from, or for monitoring targets, particularly are popular with the governments across the land. It's not the only reason to measure. Research is very much into measurement as well, usually more the scientific community trying to generate new knowledge, although there are many different types of research and different reasons to do it. Good examples are, for example, clinical trials, trying to measure in a particular way, trying to control out for various different variables where the new clinical intervention or the new medication can be tested and a change can be attributed to that if it is detected, if, as you say, we can control out all of those various other things. Usually takes quite a bit of time to do. Statistical inference being the order of the day. Improvement, on the other hand, is something that we encourage staff, continuous improvement teams to do, with a focus on understanding processes in the diagnostic stage and testing changes to determine have they had the effect that we were hoping for in the improvement stage. Specific to the continuous improvement project, oftentimes, and we recommend just enough data captured quite rapidly and quite regularly, so we can test things quickly and get an idea, a reasonably good idea. Is this working, and is this working in the way that we thought? So it's a slightly different measurement paradigm to research and performance. So I think and hope we may have a poll at this point and a question to ask you about which one of these we think is most regularly carried out within our organisation. So the question's there, 30 seconds on the clock. We close it if everyone answers more quickly. Which type of measurement approach do we most use within our organisation, within NHS England? Is it measurement for performance, research, or improvement? So pop something into the poll and we'll see if we get those results up. It's a bit where we always have to fill for dead air while the poll calculates its result. We're at the mercy of the WebEx system and its online calculations to do this. So we'll see what you think shortly, I hope. I think Michael's left me the test of seeing how much dead air I can fill on my own, which is more than usual. And I think we've got a 100% we measure for performance in NHS England from our delegates today. I'm inclined to. It's certainly the main emphasis of our work as a regulator that works very closely with government and commissioners. We tend to measure for performance. Nothing wrong with that in and of itself. It has its place. However, might need to think about measuring in a slightly different way for improvement projects, in a slightly quick and dirty way, and presenting in a slightly different way to give us a different kind of information. So before we look at how we might do that, have a look at some different types of measures that can be helpful in improvement projects and different ways to think about them. So we've got 3 types. Outcome measures, which is typically characterized by the voice of the customer or the patient, or in improvement project terms, what's the result that we're trying to achieve, and what's going to tell us if it's had that impact. The next type of measure is a process measure, something that's telling us about how the system or process works. So what process steps or what bits of the process need to work, and how do they need to work better to deliver the outcome. And then the third type of process measure is what we call a balancing measure. So keeping an eye on things that could happen as unintended outcomes or unintended consequences as a result of the changes that we test. So again, very quickly, straight into some interactive bits here, Michael, that we'll speed through with our excellent audience. What do we think of this measure? The number of hospital beds available to you in your local hospital. It's an arrow exercise for you to tell us, do you think it's a process, outcome, balancing metric? And Adrian and Richard straight in. I've got most people are going in the middle. There's a process metric. A few others piling in. I think, would you be inclined to agree with that, Michael?
Yes, I think they're doing very well.
I think they are picking it up very quickly. They've probably done it before, I'm sure. So yeah, it's a process metric predominantly. So we have another to look at. There we go, process metric. So what do we think of this one? The friends and family test, which asks, would you recommend the service to a friend or a family member? What type of metric? Oh, well, wow. There we go. There we go. A little bit of a rush on outcome metric. So yes, capturing the voice of the customer, telling us what they thought about their care and their care process. So yes, I think you picked that up right. I'd say it's a good example of an outcome measure. So one more to do. No clues as to what it might be. So what type of measure is this? Percentage of A&E patients, Richard straight in there, who could have been treated at home or in primary care. And yeah, we've got folks thinking about it. Tend to be a bit tricky to spot these, but yes, it's a balancing metric. Exactly. So there we go. I think we've got the idea of that. So what have we got next to look at? So before we move on to look at some of these things and how we would use them and capture them on our form, we've got a little bit on definitions. If we're going to measure, then there are some things we need to know, which is what we're going to measure and how we're going to measure it. So that's what definitions are, basically a plan that tells us what to measure, the steps to measure it, and that should ideally be repeatable and reproducible. And the photographs there that you can see with those words, and I took those at my daughter's school when I went for a visit in the science lab. Our continuous improvement method mimics the scientific method. It's just a little bit more down to earth, practical, and a little bit more quick and rough around the edges. But repeatable basically means if I measure it today on Tuesday, can I measure it tomorrow on Wednesday and get the same result, or the correct result, rather would be a better way to frame it. And reproducible means if I ask Michael, could he measure it on Thursday and measure it on Friday, he would be able to do the same thing and use the definition to do it and get the correct result. It might not be the same number because there'll be some variation, and we're trying to change that number anyway, but would he be able to get the correct metric or measurement? So that's what that is about, what to measure and how to measure it. And we need that so that we can collect our data and evidence whether our changes are improvements. We collect that on a one-pager, which describes the metric type. Is it one of those outcome, process, balancing metrics that we have just discussed? Something so we can identify the name of the metric, so it's identifiable. A baseline, so how did it look like before the change we made? We've got the average, we'll have a look why in a moment. We encourage measuring over time, but we can capture the average of that over time in our baseline box. We have got a space to document the target or ambition, if you like. What are we trying to achieve based on our aim statements? The result afterwards, how did we do? When we've got some after data, we can average that up and say, well, did we on average make an improvement in the change that we made? And we often collect that as a high-level summary to just say, well, what kind of percentage change was that? And oftentimes, we just look for a 50% improvement in anything that we do, just to keep things nice and simple.
The target doesn't have to be a specific number, does it? It could be a reduction or an increase in percentage.
It could indeed.
Yeah, I'll just say on there as well that we've called that a target sheet on that one. Before it was called a metric report. It's just old habits from our end that we tend to refer to these as target sheets because that's what we were taught, isn't it, Ian? So
keeps it nice and short as well.
Exactly, yeah.
So, moving on. So, plotting data over time. Why does that box have a little average in it? We think measuring over time is very, very helpful. So, we've got here a graph. On the side there's a chosen metric. It could be anything. We'll look at some of my metrics from GetFit 2018 in a moment. We've got time periods across the bottom, which could be day 1 to day 25 of my GetFit improvement project. When we plot data over time, we'll get a pattern of some sort. This is just representing a process. Doesn't really matter what it is, but there's going to be some variation in it. But we can work out, well, what's the average? And we can even work out, if we want to, what describes what's fairly normal for that process, where we might expect the data to fall, and how much above or below that we have to go before we'd start to think there's something there that we might want to investigate. And that might be because we don't know why it's happened, we want to find out. And that might be because we're trying to deliberately cause a change to our improvement activities. And we want to know, is that the beginning of us starting to see the outcome that we're trying to achieve, or is it something else? So, I think we mentioned pen and paper early on for an activity. If you haven't had a chance to grab a pen and paper, do so now. We'll do what we can usually do, 5 seconds of filling dead air while you do that, and then we'll try this activity.
Forced filling, yes. I imagine people were sat there thinking, when are we going to get to use this pen and paper? That's the answer.
I imagine people were thinking, why on earth do I have to use this pen and paper? So just to understand measurement for improvement and variation without any numbers, we're going to do it with the letter A and a little bit of writing. So if you're ready to go with your pen and paper, very quickly try this task. Write on a line on your paper a row of A's, write 10 of them using your non-dominant writing hand, so the hand you don't normally write with. So that's a line of 10 A's using the hand you don't normally write with. We might have to fill a little bit more on this because it might take you a little bit longer than normal to do that. I'm hoping one of you good folks will put into the chat box when you've managed to do that, so we've got an idea that that folks have managed to do. Hello. How do you persuade people CI is worthwhile? Well, that's a good question. One we might come back to. So yeah, we've got a few people here are saying that they have managed to do it, which is good. So I'm going to guess that we've got something that looks, done badly, thank you, Rebecca, that's the idea. There's something that looks like this. Rebecca is suggesting that that is the case. So if we've got something roughly like a not so great set of the comment box is very entertaining at the moment. Let's try the next step. So move down a line to a clean line and now draw another row of the letter A with your dominant writing hand, or your correct hand, the hand you normally write with. I know we have a good colleague on the phone with us at the moment who's having a bit of a problem with their writing hand because they've had a little bit of an accident with it. So you don't have to take part. You know who you are. And it's slightly, Rebecca's getting better. So I'm guessing we've now got something that looks a little bit like this. Or maybe better. Or maybe worse if you write as terribly as I do, those of you who see my flip chart writing. So there's one more bit, thank you. There's one more bit to this to try. So on another clean line, another row of A's to write. This time, write them with your correct hand, your dominant writing hand, but somewhere along there, throw one in with your non-dominant hand or the wrong hand. Entirely up to you to choose where it goes. And again, if a couple of you could tell us when that's done to give an indication, that would be super. I'm sure we'll take a look. Thank you very much, Lynn. That's great. Excellent. Because we've got no idea how long the task takes if you don't tell us when it's done. So I'm guessing now that everyone's got something that looks like this line of A's across the bottom. And tell me by way of the chat box if you can see on there where the one that I threw in, which is the non-dominant writing hand, is. There you go, perfect. So that is this one, the red circle, which I think is the 5th one along, as you'll all see. So it stands out quite readily as being a little bit different to the rest. So why have we done this particular exercise with the A's? Well, effectively, it represents measurement for improvement in this exactly the way we do it in an improvement project. This that we're looking at here, on this diagram, it says the metric lower is better. So it might be something like a time metric where we're trying to reduce the length of time it takes to do a particular process. We've measured something. There's variation in it, as we could see very visually with the A's. Not all of them looked exactly the same, but they've been produced by the same process. We made a change in the process to produce the rows of A's by changing from our non-dominant to dominant writing hand, and we could visually see that there was an improvement in the result, or at least on the example on the screen. And in the same way, if we continue to measure after making a change, we're hoping to see something like this, where we can see a visual pattern that gives very strong evidence that we've made a change that has led to an improvement. And that is really the concept of measurement for improvement in a nutshell, illustrated with that writing example, and what you're trying to do with your PDSA test of change. What may happen, of course, when we start to do this with our processes and activities, not every change you try and make may make a big impact or a big change. Sometimes it might be hard to tell. On this example here, we've used 2 sequential tests. The first one, it has made a change, but we might not really be able to distinguish that very well. So we might need a succession of tests of change till we get the kind of result that you want. You can see there are 2 in there. So coming back to our get fit example, how did I do? I've got 2 metrics to look at: resting heart rate, the outcome metric. Did my activity help me get a little bit fitter? So you can see some of my baseline data. I started measuring this when I started doing the running activity, knowing that that wasn't going to kick in straight away. But as I started to run, it didn't take very long for me to start seeing a difference. So I had a 63 beats per minute heart rate average in that baseline period. A few weeks of doing my couch to 5K and running, you can see on here that my heart rate starts to come down. The question is, did I sustain it? So I did it. I've got some 90-day data here, about 3 months or so later. From the end of May, my heart rate is sitting at 56 beats per minute. So do we think that I managed to achieve my goal of getting a little bit fitter and reducing my resting heart rate through my fitness activities? You can put something in the chat, or Mr. Anderson come and tell me what he thinks, although I'm sure I'll regret asking. Thank you, Charles. You can come again. Thank you, Mrs. Witness.
Oh no, they're too supportive, aren't they? We don't like to see this.
Well, indeed. Well, 63 is not bad, but 56, 58, thank you very much, is generally considered pretty good for a gentleman of my maturity, let's just say. Yes, a little bit
That's
good. For this kind of thing, Yassine, but thank you. So how did I do with my daily steps? So my baseline, before I started doing too much of this, 6,500 steps, a little bit more, is what my average looked at. How did I do? Well, my average after, it's gone up. I think we can see I'm about 8,500 plus on the steps, mainly from running days is when I hit my 10,000 or more goal, but I'm certainly not doing it every day. How did I do at the 90-day rate? Well, I've maintained what I've done. I'm still doing a bit of running every week. I'll be honest, it's not 3 times, but I do get out and do a little bit. I'm getting still around 8,500 steps per day in on average, but I'm not fully at the 10,000. So one of the reasons for that with my test of change, do I stand for telephone calls at work? Sometimes I do, but we do quite a lot of collaboration work using WebEx and video conference, which is excellent, very, very helpful. But it does mean that I'm still sitting at my desk for some of those calls that aren't telephone calls. So I think I did okay, but we didn't get everything perfect. So just to summarise, non-running days are an issue, thank you. You can performance manage me to get that sorted out. So I had 2 metrics, 2 different types. I had an outcome metric, which was my resting heart rate. I had a process metric, which was daily number of steps. We've got my averages here, baseline 6,500 a little bit more for the steps, 63 beats per minute. I was aiming to get 10,000 steps in a day and to get under 60 for my resting heart rate. So I succeeded a little bit on the fitness side. The outcome was good, 58 and below on the fitness side. On the activity side, maybe I can do a little bit better, maybe then I can get an even better result. And then roughly I've increased my daily steps by about a third, and I've got a 6.5%, although quite small, but reasonably significant in fitness terms as the result from my personal improvement project. So Get Fit for 2018 hasn't gone too bad so far, could maybe go a little bit better, I think. So, to summarise, we've got a few things to do, and then we'll see if you were paying attention. I think they'll do very well in our quiz, and I'll recap, Michael. So we've got the 5 steps there to work through an improvement project. We've got a little guidebook, the link will come back up in a moment, that you can follow through. You don't have to read that, but it can help you at the different steps. So getting the aim, setting the team up, making sure everybody knows what we're doing, when we're doing it, really focusing on what the problem is, so we can set a strong aim statement of what we're trying to achieve. Then the driver diagram approach to determine what changes can we make, then using the PDSA and some of the tools we've talked about previously to make changes, then measure, evaluate and see if it's working. And we've got to document all of that. 3 forms, 1 page each, not complicated. Yes, a little bit fiddly-diddly, they come with experience. The more improvement projects you do, the better you will get. And we are happy to coach you through some of this if you are setting up an improvement project. We can have some coaching calls if you've got questions about doing any of these things. So, recap time. It's poll time, I think, and more filling of dead air. Hopefully, got enough time to just get through, I think. So, Rachel will be pulling the poll up there for us. I think it will come up when it is ready. There it is. 30 seconds. Quickly, what are the 3 types of measures? Is it A, outcome process balance, B, output finance performance, C, benefits time cost, or is it D, measures? What measures? I'll be disappointed if there are D answers in here, but it's not for me to pick. So 10 seconds left.
It's always tempting,
on the
isn't
clock.
It always tempts that odd person to just think, yeah, I'm going to put that one.
I'm always thinking you put it in just for a laugh.
Wow, we'll never know. It's an
and we've got pretty much everyone has gone for the outcome, process and balancing are the types of measures, which is good. That's exactly the right answer, I believe. Mm-hmm. So we've got poll 2. While waiting for the poll, we'll read this out. We're waiting for the poll to come live. What are the 5 stages of an improvement project? Is it A, launch, diagnosis, prep, implementation, evaluation? Is it B, preparation, launch, diagnosis, implementation, evaluation? Or C, evaluation, implementation, diagnosis, launch, prep? You can see what we did there. It's a bit of a cruel question, this, I think. But still, 10 seconds to go to put your answer in. I think we had a question from Richard there as well. What happens to the forms when we have done? Do we archive them? You share them with us. It would be great, and we'll make sure that we can capture all of the learning. So the poll is done. Preparation, launch, diagnosis, B.
Nailed that one, didn't they?
Absolutely nailed it. One more recap question, I think, before we're into the outros.
Yeah, a few questions from other people as well, so we'll hopefully have time to answer those.
I think we will. So it's popped up there. What are the 3 components of a good aim statement? A, vague, dull and boring. B, complex, visionary and high level. Or C, system, goal and time frame.
Says
plenty
it says good aim statement, not common aim statement, doesn't it? Just to be sure.
Yes.
People don't just start randomly clicking areas.
Well, vague, dull and boring, unfortunately, is common, but a good aim statement should have what? Let's see. Oh yeah, I think we've nailed it again.
One. I like that. Somebody's come to vague, dull and boring. I like to see that.
Yes.
Would
you? Could be. Oh, it's just generally someone's view on aim statements. But yeah, we've nailed that one as well. System, for whom, goal, how good, time frame, by when. So perfect, I think. So that brings us to the end of the presentation bit. We'll see if we can pick up those questions. But just to summarise, what have we done? A good aim provides the clarity on what we're trying to achieve by specifying those three things we've just done. How good, by when, and for whom. If we measure, we can verify if the changes we've made have had the desired effect. It doesn't have to be complicated, but effective measurement requires some good definitions, and they should tell us what to measure, how to measure, when to measure, and who will measure it. And if we can do that, our definitions will be repeatable and reproducible, and we can collect data over time, which lets us measure over time, plot it out as a graph, and that is going to tell us all we need to know about whether the change has been an improvement, and to demonstrate to those who are asking how have we done, well, this is how we've done, and this is the difference we've made, and this is the impact that it has had. So, do we do questions at this point? Or...
We can do, yes. So there's a quick one to answer, which is, please could you send out the links to the CI tools used by Rebecca Cullen? Yes, we can, definitely. They are on the CI SharePoint site.
Yes.
And we'll try and put a link as well onto the Yammer page, so they'll be accessible, and we'll be able to get them out to you as quickly as possible.
Yes.
The other question that came in earlier on was, how do you persuade people CI is worthwhile, and what buy-in do you get from senior managers? Which is a good question, but
it is a good question. In terms of senior managers tend to like results, so if we do our measurement, it doesn't have to be anything huge and complicated, but if we get measurable results, even if that's just saving a little bit of time or a little bit of quality, they will be interested. The other thing that's helpful is if we can find ways for them to come out of the office, off the executive floor, and have a look at our processes and get involved in just understanding the current state and see some of the daily frustrations that we sometimes have. Sometimes we know this has happened from some of the proof of concept work. Some of our senior people have said we didn't know and we didn't understand that this went on. We can't quite believe that that's the case. We need to do something about it. Sometimes when people see things they would not have otherwise believed are true, creates a massive will to want to change, and they will support us to do things. So finding ways that we can get them to do that can be very helpful. So a combination of the two, measuring and showing that we can get results, showing them things that they perhaps wouldn't otherwise know or believe to be the case, I think would be very helpful.
I think that probably goes with the first part of the question as well, that we're always big advocates of trying to roll CI out where people are keen to have a go at it. So it's not necessarily the worst performing areas, it's always the areas where you've got people that are wanting to get involved in this, and then they become the champions to say, well, actually, we've managed to save this much time doing this, and that can be used for leaving on time or having a lunch break or doing things that increase staff morale and staff satisfaction rather than just doing more work.
Exactly. Go where the energy is, which is exactly one of the big benefits we think from the hackathon that Rebecca and Cole running early on. It found where some of the energy was, and we want to see if we can help some of those people get a CI project. I see Lynn's that said we want to, but we don't get the support. If you want to set up a chat, happy to have a chat with you about how we can set up a CI project, and we can see if we can coach you through doing it, give you a little bit of help to get started. If we can do that, we'd be happy to try. So we're rapidly running out of time, so I think we only had a couple of things to say. Everything we've talked about here is in the Simple Guide to Improving Resources. It's an A5 size book, about half A4, very colourful. It's not very long. It's not a book you need to read from end to end, but everything we've covered is in there, so you can dip in and out at the bit you're at in your improvement project if you need some help. And the Improvement Hub has got loads of ideas for improvement tools and different ways to tackle problems if you're looking for ideas. So we've now done 3+1 webinars for looking at all of these blocks, the foundation of continuous improvement, how we can run these improvement projects, different tools and concepts that can help in the middle, and hopefully at the end of that we can have an impact on improving our work, your work, and the quality of what we produce for those who depend upon what we do, which I guess we leave you with this slide hanging. Your mission, Mr. Anderson, should you choose to declare it to the audience.
I mean, really, it's give it a go, isn't it? It's go out there and see what you can do. The biggest or the smallest improvement is a start, and it's all about just chipping away and giving it a go. And if you're stuck, give us a shout. There's if Rebecca, you're on the chat at the minute, if you could put in the CI generic email address, that would be brilliant. and it'd just be good to just have a chat with some people that want to start things but don't know where to start. That's part of our job, is to give you the tools and the knowledge to be able to go do that. And just the thing that bugs you every day, the thing that gets on your nerves every day, get out there and have a look at that and see if you can change it, see if you can stop it.
You're asking for a sarcastic comment in the chat there. So on that note, get out there and try it. Have a look at the CI SharePoint page where you'll find all the stuff we talked about and these simple forms to do it. Get in touch if you want some telephone coaching to get started, or point you to some other help to get going. And we'll leave you there. We've just hit the hour. So many thanks for joining us. Many thanks for taking part in your positive comments. We hope that we can bump into you, work with you on some CI projects soon. Many thanks, folks. And have a great afternoon.
Yep, thanks very much.